did have is, I think we're going live. Is the oh yeah, there we go. So the only thing to replay. Oh, here we are. We are live. All right. So I'll do a quick
Cool.
announcement and go through with the guests on the very first episode of
I see
the
a desktop.
you see my desktop. So the very first episode of the Grumbling Guard. We're gonna go through and just have in general. We're just going to talk about dwarf issues, dwarf things, and give a chance for anyone in the chat to ask questions and sort of be a part of the conversation, so they can ask dwarf questions. And we're going to select one topic each week to go over whether this is. Oh, there we go. All right. So the two guests I have today are Aurora Boss, who is my coach, and he has a YouTube channel. I'm sure if you've seen my channel, you've seen his channel. And Aurora Boss, just say hello to everyone out there.
Hello, Chad. How's it going?
And we also have Umaze, who I've talked about many times, who literally wrote the book on the Dowie and has an amazing online manual that talks about the dwarfs in great detail in all their matchups. So Umaze, say hello to the crew.
Hey, everybody. And it looks like we're watching a move, is my guess, based on that formation.
Oh, this might be a move. I don't know which it is exactly. So we'll go through and hopefully someone pops in, and if the sound is good, the sound is good. If it isn't, it isn't. But I'll go through and start basically. Oh, geez, this thing. Unfortunately, I haven't got all of the technical issues quite resolved yet. But the idea is I want to. Well, we'll have people on. They can come in, come out of the live stream and sort of talk about their dwarf experience, and I'll ask some questions and we'll go from there. So basically, I'll go through the set of questions that I'm going to ask, and I'll answer them, and then I'll go and ask you Maze and ask Rourke Boss, and then we'll get on to our topic, and hopefully we will be able to answer some questions. So actually, maybe I'll do that. I'll do mine last. So for the introduction questions, the very first one to introduce people is, how long have you been grumbling? Which means, what was the first dwarf lore, dwarf story, or game with dwarfs in it that you got interested in? So why don't we start with you Maze?
Sure. Yeah, I actually only played dwarfs in Warhammer 1. I used to do a lot of tabletop, and when I came to the computer game, I was like, oh, this is too fast. The cavalry, it's too arcadey. And so I wanted to play a faction where, I could actually command the units and things actually went the way I wanted them to go. So I started with dwarves, and then I, sort of learned that, like, in Warhammer 1, dwarves kind of sucked, and everybody was like, they can't win, they can never win. So then I was like, oh, I really want to learn how to play this so that I can, like, somehow make them win, which was, partially successful, at least on Quick Battle. But Warhammer 1 was just a rough time for being a dwarf.
That's actually really amazing, considering how much work you put into the Dowie. I would have never ever guessed that, because you got, like, just reading your manual is, like, I know I've told you I've read it probably 6 or 7 times now, and every time I read it I learn something new. So that's quite surprising. So this can't be your first strategy game, though, clearly.
Oh no, I play a lot of strategy games, yeah. And I used to play even faster RTSs and stuff, but now I like Warhammer because I used to play tabletop, and so I like the strategy of it. The army building is so cool.
Perfect. So, what is your favorite Dowie unit in Total War Warhammer?
Probably Trollhammers, because I
Nice.
yeah.
The topic of today. I think we have another guy who might be his favorite. But why are Trollhammer torpedoes your favorite Dowie unit?
When Warhammer 2 came out, like, I knew they had been buffed, but most people didn't, and I had been practicing them in Warhammer 1 when they were just, like, way overpriced. And I was like, this is really cool. Nobody knows how good these are, and they finally shoot in these arcs that kill infantry. So they're like the all-purpose unit, and they finally counter chariots, which in Warhammer 1 were impossible. So, so you can find so many uses for Trollhammers, and they don't die. Like, they retain their effectiveness even when they're down to like 10% health, which gunners don't. So yeah, Trollhammer's really cool.
All right, so As a dwarf, you have to have a most hated faction. So, what faction is it that you hate the most? That has the most of your grudges?
Beastmen is kind of the ugliest faction to play against. You know,
Fair
everything
enough.
they have is faster than everything you have, and so it's just like, really, what do you want me to do?
Fair
You want me to
enough.
sit in a box?
So, with that said, what unit specifically would you like to personally launch from a grudge thrower?
Oh God. What are the toughest units?
Remember, you can launch it into
Carrion, actually.
anything.
Carrion.
Carrion. You'd have to tie its wings down to make it enjoyable.
Yes.
All right. So, next question is: what factions do you enjoy beating the most when you play the Dowie? As most satisfying, or
Dark
you
Elves.
find they're most the fun games, the most fun games you have?
Dark Elves.
Dark Elves. Very good choice. And which faction gives you the most trouble?
Probably Tomb Kings.
Tomb Kings. And last question is: what has you grumbling today?
Nothing really. Just kids keep me up too late.
There you go. Kids keeping you up too late. Fair, fair, fair. All right. On to our next guest, Aurora Boss. So, Aurora Boss, how long have you been grumbling? What was the first lore, dwarf story, or dwarf game that got you interested?
Well, I watched the movie Lord of the Rings.
Uh-huh.
That was the first time I got introduced to the dwarfs. And then I've been playing WoW for almost 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And, I played some dwarf characters as well.
Uh-huh.
And then ever since like 2016, I got into Warhammer 1. And I just really love dwarves because I like their style, especially in multiplayer.
Uh-huh.
And just as you may say it, dwarves in game 1 wasn't that competitive compared to other factions.
Mm-hmm.
And I sometimes just trying to make them work. Like, it gives you enjoyment to actually defeat people with underdogs, right?
Uh-huh.
And I'm not sure if you guys remember, there was a clanmate of mine. He's also a Psycho Charge member, and his name is Tsukio.
Mm-hmm.
He was a hardcore
Yeah.
dwarf main, yes, and he actually like just played a lot of games with me, and we just sort of go back and forth, and we also played some matches in the tournaments as well, and that's basically what really got me interested in dwarves because he actually showed me so many ways that dwarf can work against pretty much all factions.
Nice.
And then on the Aga, he also adopted dwarfs as well, and he actually fought some really, really epic battles in the tournaments. And I believe in game 1, the worst matchup for dwarfs are Chaos.
Uh-huh.
Because the
Agreed.
Spheromanticos,
Yeah. So hard.
yes, because the Spheromanticos, they don't really have the rampage mechanic, so
Right.
which basically means that they are just like SEMs, just basically tossing around in units and stuff on the battlefield, and just no stop to them. And the Arga actually played some really, really good matches against Chaos back in game 1, so that was very impressive. And I
Nice.
absolutely loved it.
All right. So, what is your favorite Dowie unit in Total War Warhammer?
Well, I have to say, Norgren Soundbreakers.
Mm-hmm. And why is that?
The reason why I love that is because they are just so tanky. They are probably the tankiest infantry in the entire game.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember so many times that just one unit of them holding like a gigantic horde of Greenslings or maybe Beastmen, and they just stood there for 15 minutes straight. Like they were literally everybody blocked onto them, and then you just get gyros and just drop bombs onto that gigantic blob. So that was some really satisfying replays.
So, which faction? Every dwarf has to have a grudge. Which faction do you hate the most as the Dowie?
I hate high elves.
Yes. And what unit of the High Elves would you specifically love to launch personally from a grudge thrower?
noble chariots.
There you go. That would, you might have to modify your grudge thrower to get the whole chariot with both horses on there.
Yeah.
But it could be done. It could be done.
It must be a really, really big thrower.
All right. So, what factions do you enjoy beating the most as the Dowie? Or just really fun games?
I would say Greenskins, because I recently fought a couple really close Dowie against Greenskins battle, and I really enjoyed it because it's like the most iconic grudge matchups in the Warhammer universe, and also it's really fun because there are so many ways you can do in this matchup, like for both sides. Like each side can go full melee or maybe just go really, really good range, or just go to death ball.
So,
So
which
go ahead.
which faction would you say gives you the most trouble as the Dowie?
Dark elves and high elves. I would say high elves.
High elves. Perfect.
Yes.
And my friend, tell me, what has you grumbling today?
Nothing really.
There's nothing today that made you talk under your breath or made you talk to yourself. Nothing at all.
I talked to myself about a couple games last night.
Against?
I was on the other side against dwarves, and I got beaten quite badly by the dwarves.
Well, there you go. All right, so I'll go through my introduction, and then we'll get to our topic of Trollhammer torpedoes. So, anyone who's watched the channel knows that I took up the dwarves in 1983 when my cousin brought over a Dungeons and Dragons manual, and I learned about the dwarves for the first time. And I played a dwarf cleric, and I've been playing the dwarfs and into all kinds of dwarf lore now for, I guess, 36 years. And I really enjoy it from top to bottom and every version of the dwarfs. But I honestly think, like many people who are really into dwarfs, that Games Workshop dwarfs are the very best version of dwarfs, both in lore and artwork, and I love them.
Agree.
They're amazing, really they are. My favorite Dowie unit is the basic Longbeard. I mean, I love infantry. Longbeards are my favorite. They're defensive basic infantry. They grumble, they're grumpy, they're slow, but they get the job done, and that's like me. The faction that I hate the most is the Greenskins, and very specifically, if I could pick one unit to put onto a Goblobber, well, I guess a Goblobber, a grudge thrower, it would be a Goblin Big Boss. I hate Goblin Big Bosses more than anything in this world, and it's not for multiplayer, it's from campaign and from them assassinating my units, and it drives me nuts to see those guys, and they literally throw me into a dwarf rage. So I absolutely hate Goblin Big Bosses. And what factions do I enjoy beating the most or playing the most? I'd say my favorite matchup is Elysian, because it's a fun matchup. It's hard. It's satisfying to win. And even though I do like beating other factions, I've just found I have the most fun playing against Elysian, and I don't know why. And as far as what has me grumbling today, taxes have me grumbling today, friends. Taxes. I could tell you a tax story, but turned out I paid my taxes twice last year. And so
Wow.
I've been grumbling about it all day, and well, not all day.
Refund next year, right?
Yeah, you know what? No, I mean I've got to. I mean, it's just my city taxes, but it's one of those things that has had me grumbling all day. So that's the introduction. We got me, Orcabos, Are You Maze? And we're gonna get on to the topic. We're just gonna go quickly through the topic, and if you have any questions, please.
I just gotta say, I'm watching this A-Move game. I thought he was dead like 10 minutes ago, and I can't believe he's still going.
I know, it's so crazy when I watch A-Move Hacker play like some of his games, and he won.
That's amazing.
I know, isn't it ridiculous?
That is a great game. I cannot believe it.
It is. Some of his games are ridiculous when I watch him. I don't know how. Like he's so good. But yeah, I'm gonna try and pull up a game to
Wow,
put up in the
that was a
background.
really close game.
A very, very close game. How? But that goes to the
And it was
door.
Trollhammers that saved him. It's their morale damage that they did was
Uh-huh.
crucial.
All right, so what we're gonna do is I'll pull up another replay, and I don't know if we'll get through it or not. We're just gonna go through one topic, and we really do have, I would consider, the best two proponents or the best two people on the entire internet and using Trollhammer torpedoes, because I know you Maze, you had have been a proponent of Trollhammer since game one, but you actually have a lot of information of Trollhammers in your guide, and you've been talking about them a long time ago. And I know when I first started talking to you, Aurora Boss, you were already into three Trollhammer builds, and this was a long, long time ago, like
Yes.
before anyone was using them. So I don't think there are two players that use them and have loved them and have been so effective with them so long as you two. So I guess I want to talk about the best way to use Trollhammer torpedoes. Maybe the best and worst matchups and the best complementary units to go with them. So, uh, you know. Uh, I don't know if one of you guys wants to start talking about troll hammers, but I'll give the floor to you because I've watched so many of both of your games where you use troll hammers and I love them. So
All right. So you may want to share your thoughts first.
Yeah, sure. I mean, in Warhammer 1, I was always trying to use them, but they cost about 200 points too much or something like that. And it was just, it was like, oh, I can counter a chariot with this, but I lose no matter what because I spent all my money on this. But I think the first build where I was like, this is the perfect tool was when I was trying to counter high elves. And you realize that three of these guys, backing each other up, spaced apart, they can blow up nobles, but they can blow up any infantry. They can kill dragons. They're immune to fire, which is just so satisfying when somebody breathes on it. and like they're just the perfect high elf tool. And you keep them in a tight pocket, and they can do lobbing shots. And then the lack of line of sight, which is the real challenge with the gunners. That thunderers are great, but you got to spread them out, and they got to get their line of sight, which makes you vulnerable. But if you really just
Yes.
want to do a tight build and support your infantry, you shoot over their heads, and the Trollhammers are just really versatile, and they make everybody run. They do artillery damage, plus just they kill models, and so the morale damage ends up being like -20. So it's a really effective way to make elves run, and high elves are pretty cowardly, so it's a lot of fun.
Right, definitely. Trollhammers are very, very good against high elves. Like I had a lot of success using them against Lobo chariots, or maybe even just Star Dragon. Like they can, three units of them, two volleys in, the Star Dragon just got melt down instantly, and
Yeah.
that was just how OP the damage can be. And
Yeah,
also, as
people don't even
Imez
bring
mentioned,
dragons anymore. Like
yes,
they used to bring
exactly.
dragons all the time, and now they know better.
yeah, you
Yes, and
literally you
also
never see dragons in this matchup anymore, but you always used to. So that's you two that stopped that. Thanks.
I'm not too sure because the Star Dragon has issues against Slayers as well. I think that was another reason. But the thing about Trollhammers is that, like, when I try to build an army, I always look like in the gold efficiency way. And for Trollhammers right now, the cost is very good. They are very efficient, and also
Yeah.
the things they can do, they're not only there to kill large monsters or SEMs like single entity monsters. They also can do a lot of damage to those high armored elite infantry.
Yeah.
That's really where they shine. And I'm not sure whether you guys noticed that. Sometimes I like to do this little kill boxes where I open up the box with shifting my long beers a little bit and just intentionally let people just pour in with the infantry and then just melt everything down inside that box.
Explosion damage. Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's a great point for the 900 points. The way I think about it is like you can have two different units. You could have like a crossbow and a gunner, and the crossbows for infantry, and the guns are for big stuff. But with the troll hammers, you don't get as much damage as fast usually, but you get everything. So the versatility when you're doing a build and you can't afford to get it wrong, like you need to be ready for everything. The troll hammers do everything, so they're really nice for that.
You know, and just
Right.
speaking to what you guys saying, because I was a late comer to Trollhammers, and I saw this. I read it in your guide, and I know Rourke Boss, you use them all the time, and just the versatility. I think that is one of the keys because they're not just good against chariots, like they're really good against infantry too, because they have that explosive damage, and the key there because regular Iron Drakes are actually really powerful against infantry, but they have a line of sight issues all the time. But those troll hammers can shoot over your infantry just like quarrelers. So, I mean,
Yes.
that opened my eyes once I started getting a little bit better at using them. So, I guess one of the things that took me a little bit to catch on to using them was how do you use them? What do you do to set them up? How do you align them? And if I could get both you guys to talk about how you align them and how you try and use them, how far apart are they? You know, how far back? Like, really, how do you use your troll hammers most effectively?
Yeah, I think one thing. I mean, I keep them in usually not a thin line. Usually a little bit, a couple ranks, so that they're easier to turn because the turn speed is the big factor in whether you'll get more shots off. And then the other thing is they reload while they move. So if you're in a sort of cat and mouse game, especially if you've got infantry chasing you down, you got to split up your forces. You know, you fire, you start moving, and you're going to reload and be ready to shoot again at a certain point, a certain distance away. And so, just thinking with that in mind, so you don't have to stand still to reload. Gives you that extra minute to get ready to shoot infantry again.
And work
Right.
boss?
I think for me, I like to set up my troll hammers like in a triangle shape, and then basically 2 units at the front, one unit a little bit at the back, and that they're all within the shooting range, just barely. So in this case, whenever one unit of them got maybe occupied by a chariot, for example, the other two can just shoot that chariot, but just
Yeah.
in the range. I think that's the correct way to use them. And also with trollhammers, I normally like to run with a cannon as well. So that's a lot of firepower for those monsters. And also I like to back them up with slayers or maybe giant slayers to just basically force your opponent to move away from the trollhammers because they can't really stay there and fight slayers forever. So that's just how I like to use trollhammers together with slayers.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. They're the best unit that fits. So they're so small, so you can guard them really easily with a Slayer. Slayers are sitting right on them. They can run through. They can run out. And whereas like gunners and stuff, it's a big unit. It's going to get caught. It's hard to rescue. But the trollhammers are tiny, and the Slayers can just they're just like you have to come to them, but the Slayers are right there waiting for you.
Yes,
Nice.
and I also want to add 2 points. The first one is that trollhammers compared to Thunders or Colorers, they are quite robust in terms of armor. They have huge amount of armor, so which means those knight units like harpies maybe, or even light cavalry units, they're not going to do any damage to them. That's what I really like about those trollhammers. And also, the second thing is that if you put them on guard mode, even though they may be occupied by one single entity, but
Yeah,
a few
yeah.
models can still fire. So if you just click it like a few times, they can still fire while being occupied. That's what I really like about them.
So which?
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think the point you made earlier about pairing them with cannons or other really deadly long range is important because the weakness is like you don't want to be chasing with them, right? They don't have range, and if they get separated from
Yes.
each other, they can't back each other up. So
Mm.
you
Yeah.
need that heavy firepower, long range, that's forcing everything to come to you,
Mm-hmm.
and then anything that comes within range of them dies. And if you can set that up, then you're gonna win.
Exactly.
So, the next question I have is for Trollhammer torpedoes. Then, what would you guys say? So I think we really got the best complementary units, which will be sort of a cannons and at least one unit of maybe giant slayers or slayers in the back to back them up. What would you say are their best and worst matchups as far as maybe the best three matchups, the worst three matchups, best two, or just kind of in general the best what you're looking for in a matchup as far as what you're facing and what you don't like to see when you have them. So you
I
want
think
to?
you need to be Yeah, I think you need to be careful. I mean, they can be good in any matchup, but I think you need to be careful. Things like any long range AP,
Mm.
um, or things that kill models too. But I think like Jazales, you don't want to be in a position where you're outgunned and you have a bunch of these torpedoes because they're never going to reach whatever's shooting at them. So like if you lose the big long range war,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not backed up, and they have some long range AP, maybe Dark Elf shards or whatever.
Yep.
It's it's pretty easy to lose them, and the armor doesn't help. So I think that's the biggest risk when you're thinking about using them.
Mm-hmm.
Is does the enemy going to beat me in the range game and have AP range to use?
Mm-hmm. And is there any particular matchups that you think they're the best in or the worst in?
Like Aruka said, I think they're great with high elves. I think they're pretty important with Tomb Kings, although you can go a couple different ways. Yeah, really. Other than that, I mean, they can work in almost every matchup. But I love them with vampire counts. Actually, they're kind of a surprise pick there.
Oh,
But,
that would be a surprise
Oh
pick.
man, they are really really good against vampire counts.
Yeah.
So Aurora, what's like same question to you? Sort of, what are you looking for in the matchup, or what worries you, and what are the best and worst matchups?
Well, like I said, Trollhammers are very good against vampire counts, and also they are pretty much good against any factions with really big monsters or maybe just single entities. But the thing is, I think they are very vulnerable once they got occupied, and
Hmm.
also
Yeah, they're
if
slow.
your opponent very smart, it's gonna just basically hit one of the unit and then just sort of like going in a rotation, so just ping pong between your Trollhammers. In that way, all of them just spending time to get back up and get right back to the formation, and they're not firing. And that's the most struggle I had against high ups.
Mm-hmm.
Because the high ups just use the Great Eagle, chariots and stuff, and just basically ping pong in between your Trollhammers, and all of them just constantly get occupied. They constantly spend time to getting back up and slowly crawling back into the formation, and that's pretty much the entire game. They're just
Yeah.
never really in a good situation to have a really good fire solution.
Yeah, I think it's very tricky with the high elves because, in theory, if you just had to deal with chariots, you'd want gunners spaced pretty far because handgunners they have the range, the thunderers they have the range, and the chariot, even though it's fast, as it covers that distance, you get lots of shots in.
Yep.
So the trollhammers in some ways aren't ideal, but the trollhammers are so much easier to protect, and they don't have to worry about line of sight. So and you're always dealing with this elite fast infantry. So it's like they're awesome because if you can make them work, because they do double duty depending on what you end up facing. Whereas thunderers
Right.
are a little more, you gotta hope you're facing big targets that you can shoot.
Well, is there any?
Or
The other
spacing
thing-
out a lot.
Oh, go ahead, Aurora.
Yes. I think the other thing is that when you're playing dwarves and then you pick a Trollhammer core list, and then your front line is not gonna be amazing. Like you can pick maybe one hammers, but you wouldn't have enough money to have like a very solid hammers front line. So in that case, most likely your front line is gonna be Longbeards or maybe dwarf warriors. And if your opponent, let's say dark elves or maybe high elves, they're gonna focus on elite infantry like white knights and the sword masters, and for dark elves maybe executioners. And then if your back line got occupied like long enough, and that they can't really dish out damage onto those executioners or maybe sword masters, that's where things can go really far south.
Mm-hmm. So if you had to pick factions that you would be the most worried about bringing a Trollhammer against, I heard Skaven. They could definitely be. I'd actually be very worried about bringing them against Skaven because of specifically Warplock Jazales, because of that range differential could be scary. But what would you guys say if you had to pick one or two factions that would be scary to bring them against or very risky to bring them against? What would it be? You maze?
Probably Skaven and Pirates. Skaven and Pirates.
Oh, that's a good. Yes, pirates. That would be actually, yeah. If they had Queen Bess, one splash from Queen Bess and they're gone. If you got them in a bit of a square, hey.
Yeah, or just any of their guns, really. for their cannons too.
Sure, and they can even outrange you with their deck droppers. Yes. Rook Boss?
Oh, I think any harpy factions would be my concern because your back line, you really don't have a very good way to get rid of harpies very fast.
I agree.
And so that's Beastmen and Dark Elves, and also for High Elves, because in the past people just use maybe chariots or maybe Lobo chariots, but right now people are utilizing the Great Eagles again, because the Great Eagles are pretty much just like a Pharaoh Manticore in Game 1. So and also
with a small hitbox.
Yes, with a tiny little hitbox
And a
also
weird
when they
animation.
attack,
Yeah.
yes.
I know. Once you
When
told
they
me that,
attack,
oh
it's
my
really
god.
good hard. Yes.
Because they got that super weird
the-
animation. You can't hit them.
Yes, exactly. And also, you can manage to route them with maybe a couple volleys from Trollhammers, but it's super hard to land a kill. And what happens is they just route off, and then they just heal up and then come back again. And normally that would be enough time for those nines and the sword masters really just perform.
Right. And well, and like you said, when the Eagles route, and they come back, they get healed, and that's the problem, right? Like you can actually bring
Yes.
them down enough to get them so they're gonna die, but then they route and they heal. Yeah, I
Yes.
could totally see that.
Yeah,
And
and the thing
especially Alaria is super tanky on Eagle. I'm not sure if you guys noticed or not. And also she can just basically because I had a game against Morgan, and I had a Giant Slayers on top of my Trollhammers. So basically Trollhammers are surrounded by Giant Slayers, and then Alaria just sitting there pretty much for like 2 minutes straight, and just popped a Star of Avalon, and then she just constantly had full health. And also the other thing is that once the Eagle like just doing those kind of weird like maybe just tossing your Giant Slayers around, and then your Giant Slayers have a really hard time to connect.
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I think it's totally right about the Great Eagles and the Harpies, and that's where Thunderers are much more versatile because
Right.
space them out, you can get a really good crossfire, and you can just delete a Harpy unit. You can shoot a flyer who's really good at dodging, and Trollhammers can't do that.
Right.
So that is a limitation you got to deal with then. And I think
Right.
that's I think Dark Elves are a really good example of very dangerous to use them with Dark Elves, both because the Harpies and then also with the different AP range.
The
bows.
shards, yeah.
The shards or the shades or whatever. Any of that stuff can melt them pretty fast. So it's risky.
So that's, I think, going to be our very first episode of the Grumbling Dwarf. And we got to introduce everyone to you two guys. We got to ask a few questions and talk about a very distinctly Dowie unit. And no one has anything like the Trollhammer, so I think that's actually even better. But I really, really appreciate you guys. This was last minute. I mean, I just got a hold of you literally a couple hours ago, so
No worries.
and we had some technical difficulties on the very, very first one. So I want to say thank you so much. Cheers. I'll drink an ale with you two guys anytime.
Anytime.
Yeah, this is great.
All right, so that's
Forward
it.
to the next one.
Thank you. We'll see you guys next time.
All right.
Take it
See ya.
easy.